There are ideas like old houses with too many rooms that hide in shadows. You open a door, you think it is just a closet, but inside there is a corridor. It stretches on further than the house should allow. Zeno's thoughts were like this. They started simple. A man walking, an arrow flying, but then the corridors opened and they went down into places where the mind gets lost, places where the rules change, or worse, where you see the rules were never what you thought. Some truths are not meant for easy sleep. They whisper, they wait in the quiet corners of thought. Zeno of Elea heard them. He was a philosopher, they say, but perhaps he was more like a man who pressed his ear to a strange wall, a wall that separated our world from something else. He heard the murmur of the infinite. It was a sound that could break a mind. It spoke of journeys that never end, of targets never reached. It was the sound of reality unraveling, a thread pulled loose. Imagine a line, a simple line from here to there, but Zeno saw more. He saw a chasm, an endless series of smaller lines, each one a barrier, each one a question. Can you truly cross it? Can anything? The world we see, the solid ground, the swift flight of a bird. Zeno hinted it was a dream, a story we tell ourselves because the truth was too vast, too terrifying. He pulled back a curtain, and what he showed was not empty space. It was a teeming, impossible depth. This was not just about logic games, it was about the very stuff of existence. What is movement? What is space? What is time? These were the locks on the doors Zeno rattled. He did not have answers, not the kind that bring comfort. He had more questions, questions that echoed. They echoed like footsteps in an empty, endless hall, a hall where something ancient and unseen listened, waiting for us to understand and perhaps to despair. Zeno walked a path few dared to tread. He lived long ago in a time of sun and stone, of gods who walked in gardens, or so the stories say, but Zeno looked past the sun. He looked into the shadows cast by understanding. He saw the cracks in the world's bright surface. He was from Elea, a Greek colony, a place where minds wrestled with big ideas, but Zeno's ideas were bigger. They felt older, as if they came from a time before time, from a place outside of places. He was a student of Parmenides. Parmenides said that all is one, that change is an illusion. Many people heard this. They nodded. They went on with their lives, but Zeno listened differently. He felt the chill of that idea. If change is an illusion, what does that mean for us, for our steps, for our lives that seem to move from one moment to the next? Zeno decided to show everyone. He would show them the strangeness, the impossibility. He would make them feel the illusion. His paradoxes were not meant to be simple puzzles. They were warnings, or perhaps they were traps for the mind. Once you stepped in, it was hard to get out, hard to see the world the same way again. He spoke of runners who could not reach their goal, of arrows frozen in mid-air. He used logic, clear steps of reason, but they led to places that were not clear at all. They led to a fog, a place where movement itself seemed to die, a quiet, terrible stillness. These were not thoughts born of a quiet study. They felt like fevers, like visions in the dark. Zeno was trying to protect his teacher's ideas, but in doing so, he uncovered something more profound, something unsettling. He showed that if you look too closely at motion, if you try to pin it down, it dissolves. It becomes a swarm of impossibilities, a nest of contradictions. He pointed to the everyday and he whispered, "It is not real, not as you think." Consider a journey, any journey, to the door, to the end of the street. Zeno said, "Wait, before you can reach your destination, you must first travel half the distance." This sounds simple, obvious even. But the horror begins to stir here, a small cold seed of unease, because once you have reached that halfway point, a new journey begins. To cover the remaining distance, you must again travel half of that new distance. And so it continues. A simple truth, twisted. You take a step, but that step is made of smaller steps, infinitely smaller steps. You must cross half the remaining space, then half of that remaining space, then half again, always half, always a piece left to travel. A ghostly fraction that mocks your effort. The finish line recedes, it shimmers like a mirage. You are always approaching, you are never arriving. The space ahead of you, it becomes a monster, a creature that endlessly divides itself, blocking your path with its own impossible body. This was the dichotomy paradox, a grand name for a simple, creeping dread. It suggests that all movement is a lie, an illusion painted over an endless, impossible task. Think of walking to a wall. You cross half the distance, then half of what is left, then half of that. Each step, no matter how small, contains this awful infinity. The wall waits. But between you and the wall, a bottomless pit of halves has opened. You are suspended above it, taking steps that are not truly steps. The air grows cold when you think on this too long. The familiar world starts to tilt. That simple act of reaching for a cup, of walking across a room, it becomes a stage for this silent cosmic joke. Are we moving, or are we caught in Zeno's labyrinth? A maze made of our own perception, a place where every exit leads only to another, smaller, impossible hallway. The journey itself becomes a form of madness, an endless falling, without ever hitting the ground. Then came Achilles, the great hero, swiftest of all Greeks, strong and fast, a blur of motion, and Zeno pitted him against a tortoise, a slow, plodding creature. The tortoise is given a head start. A small courtesy. Achilles, confident, begins to run. Surely he will overtake the tortoise. It is only a matter of time, or so we believe, so our eyes tell us. But Zeno, with a quiet smile, shakes his head. He points to the space between them, and the horror unfolds again. Achilles must first reach the point where the tortoise started. In that time, the tortoise, however slow, has moved forward. It has covered a new, smaller distance. Now Achilles must cover that new distance. But as he does, the tortoise crawls yet further, a tiny bit more. Each time Achilles reaches the spot where the tortoise was, the creature has gained new ground. The gap narrows, it shrinks, it becomes agonizingly small, but it never disappears. The tortoise is always ahead, always. The hero, the symbol of speed, is caught. He is trapped by an idea, an infinite series of catches up. He runs faster than the mind can easily follow. But the tortoise, in its slow, steady progress, is protected by an invisible shield of logic, a shield woven from endless divisions of space and time. Achilles, for all his might, cannot break through. He is forever chasing, forever closing a gap that reforms itself, like a wound that will not heal, but bleeds tiny moments. Imagine the frustration, the growing dread in Achilles' heart. He, the fastest, cannot catch the slowest. The world itself seems to mock him. The ground beneath his feet becomes a treadmill of despair. This isn't just about a race, it is about purpose, about reaching any goal when an infinite sequence of requirements stands in the way. Zeno showed us that even the simplest pursuit could be a journey into an endless shrinking corridor, a race against an ever-receding shadow. The tortoise becomes a symbol of something dreadful, something that cannot be overcome. Section 5, the arrow suspended in dread. Now picture an arrow fired from a bow. It flies, swift and true, or does it? Zeno asks us to look closer, to slow down time, to examine each instant. At any given moment, he says, the arrow is in a specific place. It occupies a space equal to its own length. In that single instant, that frozen sliver of time, Is the arrow moving? If it is in place, it cannot be moving another place. In that instant, it is at rest. It is still. If time is made up of these instants, and in every instant the arrow is motionless, then where does the movement come from? How does it travel from one still moment to the next? Zeno's question hangs in the air, heavy, unsettling, like the arrow itself, suspended not by air but by a terrifying logic. If at every point in its flight it is indistinguishable from an arrow at rest, then it is at rest. The flight is a trick of the eyes, a story the mind tells, the paradox of the arrow. It slices time into an infinite number of still frames, like an old film reel, each frame showing the arrow in one position. But the movement, the flow between frames is missing. It is lost in the gaps. The gaps Zeno so cruelly exposed, the smooth arc of the arrow shatters. It becomes a series of static poses, a collection of frozen moments. And if this is true for the arrow, what about everything else? What about the beating of your heart, the rush of blood? The world slows, it freezes, the air becomes thick, solid, movement becomes a ghost, a memory of something that perhaps never was. Zeno suggests that our perception of motion is a grand illusion. We see the arrow fly because we do not see the instants. We blur them together. We create the movement in our minds, but the reality, the cold, hard, instant-by-instant reality is one of stillness, an eternal, unmoving present, a terrifying, silent universe. This is the dread of the frozen flight. Section 6, The Abyss Gazes Back, Infinite Division. Zeno's paradoxes all point to one dark underlying truth, or perhaps a dark question, the question of the infinite, the idea that any distance, any amount of time can be divided endlessly, cut into smaller and smaller pieces forever. This is not a comfortable thought. The mind tries to grasp it. It tries to find an end, a smallest piece, but there is none. The division goes on and on, into an abyss of tininess, a void that has no bottom. Imagine holding a stone. You can break it in half, then break a piece in half again. You can imagine doing this with tools, then with finer tools, then with tools of the mind. But the mind falters. It reaches a point where the pieces are too small to see, too small to conceive. Yet Zeno insists the division continues. Logically, mathematically, even if your senses fail, even if your sanity frays, the process itself is relentless, uncaring. It pulls you down with it. This infinite divisibility is the hidden monster in Zeno's tales. It is the reason Achilles cannot catch the tortoise. It is why the arrow never truly moves. It is why you can never quite reach the door. Space itself becomes a treacherous thing, not solid and dependable, but a shimmering, endlessly layered illusion. Time, too, unravels. It becomes a string of countless beads. So many beads that they cannot be counted. Each bead a moment of stillness, hiding the secret of its connection to the next. When you stare into this abyss of infinite division, something stares back. It is not a monster with eyes. It is the coldness of pure logic, the vastness of a concept that dwarfs human understanding. It whispers that the world is not made for us, that its true nature is something alien, something that operates on principles that make our reality seem like a thin, fragile skin stretched over an ocean of impossible depths. The skin can tear. Zeno showed us the rips. Section 7. Listeners in the walls of reality. Sometimes it feels as if Zeno was not just thinking, it feels as if he was listening to something ancient, something that hums beneath the surface of the world. His paradoxes are like messages, scrawled warnings from someone who has peeked behind a forbidden curtain. What if our understanding of movement, of space, of time is a carefully constructed stage, a play put on for our benefit? And Zeno stumbled upon the stagehands. the hidden mechanisms. Perhaps there are watchers, beings or forces that exist in these infinite divisions, in the gaps between moments, in the endless fractions of space. They are not gods of myth, not spirits of the trees or sky. They are something else, something tied to the mathematics of the void. They understand the stillness of the arrow. They see Achilles' endless, futile chase. They are the silent audience to our illusory motions. Perhaps they are amused, or perhaps indifferent, which is worse. Zeno's logic pries open cracks in the familiar. And through these cracks a different kind of reality seeps in, a reality where common sense breaks down, where the simple act of walking becomes a philosophical horror. It is in these moments of broken understanding that you might feel them, the listeners, the ones who inhabit the true, infinitely complex structure of the universe. They are not judging, they are merely present. Their presence is the unsettling truth Zeno uncovered. His paradoxes are not just for classrooms, they are for the quiet hours of the night when the house is still and you hear a floorboard creak. Is it the house settling, or is it the sound of the infinite, the slight shifting of the impossibly small segments that make up your floor? Zeno gave us ears to hear this subtle, constant unraveling. He made us aware of the unseen, the unacknowledged, the entities that might dwell in the very fabric of being, the true, quiet rulers of the spaces between. Section 8, the fracturing mind, a glimpse of the void. To truly dwell on Zeno's paradoxes is to invite a certain kind of madness, not a raving, screaming madness, but a quiet, cold fracturing of the mind. The world you knew, solid, dependable, it begins to shimmer, to waver, the edges blur. You see the arrow, you know it moves, but Zeno's voice whispers in your ear, does it look closer? Look at the instance, and you look, and the movement vanishes, replaced by an awful, logical stillness. This is the terror. It is not a monster under the bed. It is a monster in your thoughts, a monster made of reason itself. Your own mind becomes the labyrinth. You try to find a way out, a way back to the simple world. But every path of logic leads deeper into the paradox, deeper into the unsettling implications. You are Achilles, chasing a solution that always stays just out of reach. You are the arrow, frozen in a moment of terrifying clarity. The comfort of ignorance is stripped away. You have seen too much. You have thought too deeply. The ordinary becomes extraordinary in a disturbing way. A walk in the park is no longer just a walk. It is a confrontation with the infinite. A cup falling from a table is not just an accident, it is a demonstration of impossible motion. The mind struggles, it tries to hold on to the illusion of a coherent, flowing reality, but the cracks Zeno showed are always there, spreading. This is the glimpse of the void, the realization that our senses, our intuitions might be profoundly wrong, that the universe operates on principles that are alien to our experience. Zeno did not just challenge mathematicians, he challenged sanity. He offered a peek into a reality so strange, so counterintuitive, that the human mind can only recoil, or break, or perhaps become something else. Something that understands the silence between the ticks of the clock, the vastness in the smallest speck of dust. Section 9. The unwoven tapestry, a final frightening thought. What if Zeno was right, not just in a clever philosophical way, but truly right? What if movement, as we perceive it, is the grandest illusion of all, a trick of consciousness, a story woven to shield us from a truth too stark to bear? Imagine existence as a tapestry, richly colored, full of motion and life. Zeno comes along. He doesn't rip the tapestry, he simply points to a single thread and he asks you to follow it, to see where it truly leads. The thread leads down into an infinity of smaller threads, sub-threads, until the weave itself dissolves, until there is no pattern, only an endless, dizzying complexity. The picture on the tapestry, the world we know, it fades, it becomes a suggestion, a ghost. What remains is the raw, unsettling structure beneath. The paradoxes are not flaws in logic. They are features of this deeper reality, a reality we are not meant to fully grasp, a reality that hums with a silent cosmic indifference. Perhaps Zeno did not solve the mystery of motion. Perhaps he revealed that motion itself the mystery, a sacred, terrifying mystery, one that guards an even greater secret about the nature of all things. His paradoxes are like keys. They do not unlock answers, they unlock more doors, each door leading to a room darker, more vast than the last. And in these rooms the comfortable laws of our world whisper and fade, replaced by something older, something stranger. So the next time you see an arrow fly or watch a runner race, pause. Remember Zeno, remember the whispers of the infinite, the shudder of division without end, the cold touch of a logic that unmakes the world. Perhaps in that moment of unease you will feel it too, the slight loosening of the threads, the terrifying beauty of a universe far more mysterious and far more unsettling than we could ever dare to imagine. The tapestry is always unraveling, slowly, quietly, endlessly.